That's why an awareness-based approach can be kind of, when people come to me, they're like, wait, so we're not solving problems here. You're not telling me to do anything. No, actually, all we're doing is seeing the extent to which the things that you're already thinking, doing, believing, behaving are in the way of you simply fully experiencing whatever it is that you're experiencing in life. And in so doing, what they see, the people that I find this happening time and time again with the people that I'm working with, they naturally see their capacity grow and their ability to do the thing. I don't even teach them a skill. They come and they say, wow, I'm more effectively in conflict now. I'm more effectively holding boundaries. I'm more effectively managing my time. I'm more effectively presenting with confidence. I'm more effectively fill in the blank. And we haven't done any tactical solutions at all.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to 7 and 8 figures without burning out. Before Purple Circle, I started and scaled several 7 and 8 figure career coaching businesses myself and consulted with 2 career coaching businesses that are now doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or just building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Regan, and today's guest is Ty Hammond. He's an executive and team coach and founder of One Mountain Leadership and creator of True Leadership Approach. Ty helps aspiring leaders become executives and current executives become exceptional. With over 15 years of experience coaching leaders across startups and Fortune 500 companies, he brings a deeply transformative approach to leadership, one that prioritizes lasting change over service level tactics. The True Leadership Approach is an awareness-based method offered through a suite of programs that help clients unlock the insight, impact, and influence they need to operate at the top of their game. And it's a pleasure for me to have Ty on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Ty.
Thank you so much for having me, Regan. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure. So, Ty, tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to become a coach and then start your own coaching business.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's interesting. I feel like folks in coaching often come to it after having sort of been executives in a company somehow. To some extent, I've always been very passionate about both leadership and personal development. I think, the roots of my career certainly are found in my own desire and need for growth and transformation, as I think, many coaches or people in this field often are. I actually I went to school for my master's degree in social work and started working in the nonprofit sector. So before I was doing individual coaching with leaders, I worked at a macro scale across multiple networks with the Ford Foundation and doing lots of strategic planning, organizational development, really working with the development of teams. So I really began with that sort of as the foundation. The work with groups, the work with teams, I've always been extremely passionate about how people work together better. I've had certain experiences in my own career that have shown me, boy, working on a team can be anything from literally one of the most inspiring and rewarding experiences in life to one of the most overwhelming and stressful ones. So I'm really curious about moving the needle in the positive direction there. So I've been at it for really the breadth of my career. When I moved out to California, I would say about 12 years ago, now from New York City, I made my first foray into beginning to work with private companies out of the sort of only the nonprofit sector. And initially in my journey was working with other leadership development organizations, hired on as a coach, as a team coach, as a facilitator, as a trainer. And over time, essentially got a little bit disillusioned. I've worked for some amazing companies, and I could say a little bit more about, what sort of inspired me to create my own, what I call the True Leadership Approach to leadership development. But ultimately, it comes down to this, which is that I've seen over my career, especially at the beginning of it, regardless of the amazing feedback that we would get in a training session of, what a fantastic training. We would come back, several weeks later and the needle just hadn't moved. Right. So I think it has been a bit my disillusionment with traditional leadership development approaches that are wonderful in theory and sound great coming out of our mouths or up on, when we're doing the presentation, but really fail to make that meaningful impact that both leaders and organizations need.
And so it's been, like we mentioned on the intro, there's been about 15 years of experience coaching leaders. How long has it been that you actually started your own coaching business and went privately?
At this point, I want to say it's been about 8 years. So I've been in corporate. I've had my own, like One Mountain Leadership has been its own entity for more than that. But for a while, all of the business that I had was my company, which was me getting hired by other leadership development organizations. So they were the ones getting the clients. I was the one coming in and executing the work. It was about 8 years ago that I really decided to take that step, move out from underneath some other company's umbrella and begin to create my own way, my own path. And that was really the birthing point of One Mountain Leadership. It was not without challenge, I would say. Extremely grateful that I did, but it wasn't necessary, and one that felt necessary, but it certainly wasn't easy.
Well, I really like that because there's been a lot of coaches that we've had on the podcast that are working under a contract for multiple coaching businesses so that they don't have to do marketing and sales, but they can focus on doing the coaching. So you basically took the leap and also went and did your own sales and marketing. And yeah, definitely a challenge there. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think it may be skipping ahead here a little bit, but I think it's relevant to say that one of the things that has, and I just uncovered this maybe, I want to say about 2 years ago, and it really, really helped me, is uncovering what I call in the work that I do, I call it a deep story. A deep story, a story so deep it's felt as if it's true, which doesn't mean that it's necessarily a thought that I think, but it's a really deeply embedded assumption that was getting in the way of me being really effective, not as a coach. And I've always got learning and growth to do, but I'm really confident at this point in the services that I provide and the results that I'm able to help my clients generate. Where I haven't felt traditionally a lot of confidence, or rather was experiencing a lot of self-doubt, was in being an entrepreneur, was in being a business owner, was in doing marketing and sales and, all of the things that, you could be the best at what you do. But if people don't know that you're doing them, or if they do know that they're doing them and they don't want to call and they don't want to talk with you, or even if they do talk with you and they don't want to invest in themselves with you, then it doesn't matter how good you are at that stuff. So I think the underlying deep story that I found within myself that was really, really helpful to find was that I had a story running that I just wasn't an entrepreneur. That I was becoming an entrepreneur, that it was because it was something that I needed to do in order to do the work that I really love. And as soon as I saw that, everything really shifted, because the reality is now, with getting some support, I actually am really loving the entrepreneurial journey. Yes, it's challenging, it's hard, but it's also extremely rewarding. And I get that sense of ownership, which personally I really, really get a lot out of, that has me feeling that sense of security that I get to outreach in the way that I want to, engage with the kind of folks that I want to call in and ultimately do the work that I love.
Which part of your coaching journey do you find the most rewarding since you started your coaching business? Like since you're doing it on your own?
It's been the creative aspect that I've appreciated and got the most out of. So as I've said, I am the creator of the True Leadership Approach. This is an approach that pulls on my life experience, my work and experience, of course, as an executive leadership coach, working with teams, studies in consciousness, a 15-year apprentice with a teacher in an ancient wisdom lineage, and sort of pulls it all together based on what I have learned over time in a methodology that I feel like really consistently delivers results for that, and is able to meet leaders in the way that they need to be met in order to really get those long-term sustained results. And the creative process in that, of developing that methodology, of creating the courses, of having the agency over the terminology and all of those things, has felt incredibly engaging. And of course, in creating those things myself, I become more and more adept at having that in my bones so that when I'm engaging with the people that I'm working with, I think it has even that deeper impact because of that work.
Is there a specific target audience that you're typically working with or that you like to work with? Do they fit in an industry or like a demographic? And how would the transformation look for them? We talked a little bit about this in the intro as well, but how would the transformation look for them once they've worked with you?
Yeah. So here's the reality is the work that I offer really can be relevant for anybody. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. But typically, so I like that I really am interested in the idea of leverage within a system. That is to say, how can we work smart, not hard? With the approach that I offer, we identify something called the heart of the matter. That is to say, of all of the ways that we might need to learn and grow, what's the one thing that's really at the core of everything? If you can transform that even just a little bit, everything that ripples out from there can shift or transform quite a bit more easily. That is much more efficient, effective, and sustainable over the long term than sort of picking at the things on the surface, which might give you a momentary fleeting feeling of, oh, I've done something well. But one of the reasons that I love working with leaders is because I see them as leverage points within the system of certainly their organizations, but also within society. Leaders in organizations, in business, in society. And leaders are people with outsized impact in organizations and quite honestly on the real lived everyday lives of other people, right? Or the beacons of culture and have a great impact on how people experience their day to day. So currently, the work that I do with leaders and the outreach that I am doing tend to focus on director and above level leaders. So director, VP, and C-suite level leaders. The sectors that I typically work with are in healthcare and living in the Bay Area, of course, tech, though I do have clients from several different industries. The reality is that my approach is not sector specific, and I can say a little bit more about that. But ultimately, I help leaders to learn how to use their biggest, stickiest challenges, whatever they are, to grow their capacity and their confidence to meet and respond to any challenge that they experience in leadership in life. So maybe it makes sense to just take this one step farther. This sort of is built on a premise that the vast majority of leadership development approaches out there fall into what I call the big trap. The big trap is attempting to avoid, overcome, or solve a problem before growing from it. So the work that I offer is based on a premise that is fundamentally different than the way that we often look at challenges. Oftentimes we see a challenge as here for something for us to solve. In the true leadership approach, there's an acknowledgement that something that I perceive as a challenge or is a problem is actually reflective of the fact that I have reached my capacity to simply effectively respond to it with ease and with flow. It's actually a signal or a sign that I have an opportunity to grow. And actually, if I rush to solve that problem immediately, if I rush to tactically do something to get that problem out of the way, then I haven't grown from it. And the next time that same challenge comes back around, it will still feel like a challenge. So the distinction is, if I'm able to grow from the challenge that I have, I'll be more effectively able to appropriately respond to that situation the next time it comes around without it being perceived, from my perception, as a challenge at all.
That is very interesting. So growing from the challenge. So thinking of this from like a bird's eye view, not just from like the moment, the challenge we have now, let's solve it, but actually let's grow from this. And so in the future, this actually will not affect us anymore.
There's a simple distinction that I make between two different types of challenges that I think really help to illuminate the distinction here. And when these two are confused, it can really lead to people getting stuck for years, careers, or even lifetimes. This distinction is between tactical and adaptive challenges. A tactical challenge is fairly straightforward. The answer, the appropriate response to a tactical challenge is what to do about it. Typically, tactical challenges have fairly straightforward solutions, right? Maybe I don't have the knowledge or the skills yet, but I can learn the knowledge and the skills and I can do that thing over time and I'll solve the problem. That's a tactical challenge. An adaptive challenge is a bit different. Adaptive challenges cannot be solved by more information, knowledge, or skills. That will actually just make things a bit more complicated. Adaptive challenges are less about what to do. The answer to an adaptive challenge is who must I become? It's about actually becoming aware of the things that I'm already doing that are in the way of me actually seeing reality more clearly and actually growing my capacity to be able to do the thing that is going to help. So when we mistake an adaptive challenge for a tactical one, we're using a what to do approach for a who to become problem. You're going to feel stuck. You're not going to, no matter how hard you try, and you will continue to try harder, doesn't matter how great the tool is, there's no greater waste of time than learning how to use a tool that you're not ready to use. So the adaptive side is about growing that capacity, growing that strength to be able to use the tools that are effective to solve those problems. Doesn't make much sense to try to solve those problems without the capacity to use the tool first. That's the basic premise that makes the distinction.
And in short, how would someone be able to tell the two apart directly?
Yeah, it's a really great question. Ultimately, it is a feeling of being stuck. So one of the telltale signs. So when you're learning something, which in a tactical challenge, you're learning something, right? Like as we all do, when you learn, you have occasional setbacks, right? So you get some knowledge, you begin to put something into practice, and you take a couple steps forward, and then you stumble a little bit, but then you get back up and you say, "Oh, what I learned from that," and you continue to walk forward, and you have the occasional setback, right? That's typically what it's going to look like if you truly have a tactical challenge at your hands. If your challenge is more adaptive, and I can give an example here in a second, but if your challenge is more adaptive, then rather than just a little bit of a setback, you'll experience a total backslide into old behaviors, stuck in a rut, starting from square one again. Yeah. So let me give an example. Time management is an example of a kind of challenge that it might be tactical, could be purely tactical for you. You just haven't learned, or maybe you just need to learn one of the many time management skills out there, or, get a time management app to help you with you and learn that thing and just do it over time, right? But it might also be adaptive, and sometimes it can be a mixture of the two. But let me give you an example. A very simple tactical solution to time management and prioritizing is saying no to other things. That's very simple, right? Something comes through and I just say no. Now I have to have a decision-making process, but I say no. That's a tactical solution. But the reason that I'm not saying no is because I'm afraid of what you will feel if I say no, or I'm afraid of how I might be perceived. That's preventing me from simply saying no. That's an adaptive challenge. So it doesn't matter. I can know all day that I've got all of these multiple priorities and that I'm overwhelmed and I've got all of this work going on. But somehow, even though I know that I just need to say no to certain things, I'm not saying no. Or maybe I get good for a week and then I fall back into old patterns and I'm just saying yes to everything again and I'm still feeling overwhelmed. That's typically the frustration of feeling stuck and like you just can't move past a particular point, even when you're trying your hardest. That is typically good evidence that you do not have the capacity yet. You've not grown the strength yet to utilize the tactical solution for that. Using a tactical solution that you're not ready to use is a little bit like giving a sledgehammer to a baby. Maybe it's the right tool for the job, but the baby isn't going to be able to lift it. We need the baby to grow up a little bit and to grow some muscles to be able to pick up the sledgehammer. Then we use the sledgehammer. That's the distinction.
Interesting. So you would say that the adaptive challenge is more of a mindset issue as opposed to an actual, you're missing an information or you need to do some tactic or whatever it is. It's not a what, but it's more of like a mindset you have to change, not what you're doing has to change.
That's a distinction, actually. Actually, a mindset change is a tactical solution for an adaptive challenge. That this is one of the premises of my approach, and this is why, what I call the mindset madness that's out there. So mindset change can be really, really effective in particular situations if you have an adaptive challenge and you work to say, okay, instead of me thinking and believing this, I'm going to think and believe that. That's a tactical solution to an adaptive challenge, one that can actually create more challenges in the long run. It's a common misconception, I would say, that, or let's say changing our mindset has, by changing the beliefs that we have, we can change our behavior. But a mindset change is the result of a transformation. It's not the cause of one. We're trying to work back upstream. This is part of the big trap. It's not possible to do being. A mindset change is something that you do. You tell yourself to think something different in order to what? Be more confident, be more present. It's not possible to do being. You can't do the experience of confidence. You can do things that look confident. You can do things that have the appearance of confidence. But any confidence that you actually feel experientially isn't going to be caused by the mindset that you have. A growth mindset is a natural outcome of growth. It's not something that you have to work to create. It's something that emerges from simply growing. This is the distinction. The work that I offer is it's awareness based. It's not behavior based, and it's not based in simply changing your beliefs. It's changing at the level of immediate direct experience, which naturally gives rise to beliefs and behaviors, which will naturally reflect whatever level of reality you're experiencing and living from. I know we're getting a little deeper probably than you had imagined.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just like trying to figure out then what would be the, like, in a short answer, what would be the approach one has to take? Maybe it's not approach, but in order to overcome an adaptive challenge.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, what you can look at the basis of any adaptive challenge is fear and reactivity. That's ultimately what we're talking about when we're talking with an adaptive challenge, or something that's in the way, right? Right. And so one of the way it ultimately comes down to growth. So tactical challenges are really about learning, right? I learn, I get information skills, I learn, I apply, I do, I get better over time. It's competency based. But capacity is really about growth. Well, how do we grow? It's a trick question. There's nothing that you need to do to grow. Growth on this planet for anything that's alive is quite natural. All that you need to do to grow from any experience that you have is to experience it fully. Fear and reactivity is what prevents us from experiencing something fully. So in the approach that I offer, what we begin to do is become aware of the places where we are reactive and in the ways that we are afraid, that we are unconscious of, and begin to be with and be in the experience that we're actually having. That's literally all that we have to do. It's actually about ceasing doing the reactivity. But you can't cease or be with reactivity that you can't see. That's why an awareness-based approach can be kind of, when people come to me, they're like, wait, so we're not solving problems here. You're not telling me to do anything. No, actually, all we're doing is seeing the extent to which the things that you're already thinking, doing, believing, behaving are in the way of you simply fully experiencing whatever it is that you're experiencing in life. And in so doing, what they see, the people that I find this happening time and time again with the people that I'm working with, they naturally see their capacity grow and their ability to do the thing. I don't even teach them a skill. They come and they say, wow, I'm more effectively in conflict now. I'm more effectively holding boundaries. I'm more effectively managing my time. I'm more effectively presenting with confidence. I'm more effectively fill in the blank. And we haven't done any tactical solutions at all.
Interesting. So I would say maybe that, but like the strategy would be to always like keep observing ourselves, keep an eye on what we're doing, be aware of what's going on. Just be aware, not take any action, just be aware and observe yourself, and then naturally you will grow from it. But if you're not like paying attention, then there's no growth.
Absolutely. The trick is that awareness can be quite tricky. So learning what awareness actually is the foundation of the true leadership approach, because we often mistake it for what it's not. So people will often say, for example, trust me, I'm aware of this thing that I do. I hate that. Well, that's not awareness. That's judgment. You're unaware of your judgment. You're seeing through a lens of judgment that you're unaware of. That's going to distort your perception. This is why the thing that I say is it is much more effective before solving the problem that you think that you see. Make sure you're seeing clearly the problem that you actually have. When we're seeing through a lens of reactivity, something that I call our egoic construct, our assumptions and our limits, our perception is distorted, filtered, and limited in a way which our perception of reality is distorted, filtered, and limited. So everything I see is going to feel extremely true to me. It's going to feel totally real. It's real, but it's not true. In other words, the way that I go to solve the problem that I see will be solving if there's fear and reactivity that I'm unaware and unconscious of. I will be solving for a problem that actually only exists in my mind, not in reality. That's going to make me less effective. That's why the work of awareness is so incredibly powerful, because the more awake and aware that I become, the more accurately that I am perceiving reality, the more naturally I am going to appropriately respond without a lot of training. I'm simply responding appropriately because I see reality as it is.
I have to say, I definitely have to rewatch the podcast episode myself because like it needs a lot of attention, and I definitely want to learn from it. Hopefully everyone who's listening is getting a lot of value from this.
I appreciate the opportunity to chat about it a little bit. I know we're going at a time, so I'm happy to get to
Yeah.
some of the other questions now.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I want to connect back to what you were explaining. Right now, with your coaching business, what would you say is a tactical challenge that you're facing?
Yeah. Right now, yes, a tactical challenge. This is where I'm at with my coaching business. It is like the tactical stuff is the stuff that I need help with. So I'm at a place now where I have I may be skipping around here because I know some of the questions that you might ask. I've got a fairly good lead generation system. I hired on a coach called The Expert Project. It's expertproject.com. They've been fantastic, really, really helpful. Some guys in Australia, actually. And all of my lead generation is in LinkedIn. And I've got a system going that's, creating fairly consistent lead generation there. It's been a long time to get me to that point, but I'm feeling fairly confident about it. The next piece is really, and you're one of, this podcast is one, saying yes to something like this is actually indicative a little bit of the next sort of tactical step for me, which is a way to get my voice and my message into the world, into different kinds of channels in different ways. So it's, where I'm lacking right now, what I'm actively looking for as that is I am wanting some guidance in terms of what are the strategic next channels. I've been working on LinkedIn primarily, just keeping it simple. That has been really helpful. But as I begin to think about expanding my message and being out in the world more, how do I do that in a strategic way? What's the leverage point there, right?
Yeah.
Harkening back to my initial point. So I hope that sort of answers. That's what I'm thinking about right now.
That makes a lot of sense. So this is like the next challenge that you're trying to solve for is trying to figure out strategically what would be the next channel apart from like what we're already doing, which is working. And I believe you said that is kind of like outreach. You're reaching out to people, or is it like content on LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's all that. So it's a consistent content generation. I have outreach. I have hired a virtual assistant who's amazing, has been working with me for several years, is primarily, helping me with direct message outreach. I have every month I have a free workshop, and, I've got a newsletter that goes out, and I've got free offers and things like that. So I've been slowly building that up. I think the primary thing is that when people connect with me, they see my name over and over and over again. I'm in this for the long haul, and I realize that who befriends me may never say anything to me, and they may, look at my stuff for 6 years before they ever pick up the call. That's totally fine. I'm here for the long haul, and just trying to get into the mode of consistently pumping out and creating things to be a little bit more present and, on the top of people's minds, maybe when it does come time.
And just to close it up, is there any final advice you'd like to give to other coaches just like yourself who are trying to scale their impact? That could be advice either on the adaptive challenges or the tactical challenges.
Yeah, by far, I would say the thing that I wish that I had done 3 years prior to doing it was hiring a coach. Just attempting to recreate the wheel. And ultimately what was happening was, because it was something that I had never done before, and I was trying to, learn by through my own research or things that I had seen on LinkedIn, but I never really had the confidence in my strategy. So because I didn't have the confidence in my strategy, I would do just a little bit and then I wouldn't follow through. And then I'd end up feeling self-doubt because it wasn't getting the results that I wanted to or needed to. I'm a coach, right? Haven't ever grown a business before. And just getting to that point, I think it literally struck. I was just driving. I just picked up my kid from school and I'm driving home. And I had even been saying for a year something like, oh, I should get a coach, like that'd be helpful. And for whatever reason, I was just driving down the road and it just hit me like a bolt of lightning. I was like, I shouldn't get a coach. I need a coach. Like, I need help. I've never done this before. Why am I trying to do this all alone? That's one of my deepest stories. I have a tendency to attempt to do things because I think that I'm all alone. And then I sort of have this bolt of lightning, awareness moment where I'm like, oh, there's resources available. Like, I could get some help with this. Maybe I'll reach out and get some help, So maybe someone that hears it in a timing, I would say at the very least, reach out and start having those conversations and consider that, if you're really spinning your wheels and things are feeling too hard, there's probably an easier way, and maybe finding someone to support you to make it a little bit easier will be worth the investment.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And for anyone who wants to connect with you or find you, they can go onto your LinkedIn, Ty Hammond, or they can go into onemountainleadership.com, which is your website. Is there any other way they could connect with you?
I think, like I said, I'm looking forward. Hopefully, the next time you have me over, Regin, that I'll be available on more platforms. But right now, LinkedIn and my website is probably the place.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ty.
Thank you so much, Regin. It's been a pleasure.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to 7 and 8 figures without burning out. To learn more about Purple Circle, our community, and how we can help you grow your business, visit joinpurplecircle.com.